Well, hi, Anna Eskamani.
Hello.
Thank you for giving you some of your time today, because
it's an honor.
You're a very busy person.
But we all are very busy. But yes, I am busy to like a very, very big amount. Of my life is just running from place to place, or these days Zooming from room to room.
Zooming and also going on live, right?
Right. Oh, yeah. We do.
You're on there like every day.
We are. We do several live Instagram and Facebook events. Some are pre-scheduled. Some are spontaneous. But we're trying to use whatever tools we have to stay connected with people and to get information out to folks, because we know that there's just a vacuum of leadership that actually cares. And so, we're trying to fill in those gaps all the time.
I mean, you're really kind of on the ground floor. I mean, I see you in the live thing. You're talking to individual people if they're having problems. I know unemployment's a big one right now.
Totally.
I watched your live thing yesterday.
Oh, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I should probably be on for like 15, 20 minutes. How long were you on yesterday?
It was like an hour and 15.
Yeah, I think I actually kind of dozed off because I was kind of.
Did you fall asleep to my soothing voice?
I think I did. I was laying down, kind of like resting, napping, anyways. And I was like, oh, Anna went live, and I was like,
oh my god, that's so funny.
Just because I was already kind of in that sleepy mood, but I woke back up and I was like, oh, she's still going.
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
But it's awesome because I don't know a lot about politics. I'm no expert, but it stands out to me when I see a representative or any politician that is being very much themselves and is very much part of their community. And there's no like fake facet when it comes to you.
You don't know a lot about politics, but you just called out like the problem in politics, right? Or folks that are not accessible, are not themselves. They send their staff instead of them going to solve a problem. So I actually think you know a lot.
I don't know. I said maybe I know more than I'm letting myself accept. But I'm always willing to learn more, and I'm always confused even when I think I know something. You know what I mean? Especially when it comes
overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. And for somebody, I mean, you're going for re-election right now.
Correct.
But this was your first time.
Correct. Yeah, ever.
2 years ago when you ran and you won.
My first time running, my first time serving in public office. Yeah, everything's very new for me, and I think for our community too, especially since I know that our work has brought together a lot of new political faces, a lot of folks who want to get involved for the first time but never felt inspired to. So I always feel like I'm going on this adventure with a lot of other people. Like we're just doing it together because it is so massive and the work we have to do is so large. But when I think about it as like a collective effort, it makes me feel a lot better about it.
Totally, yeah. You're not on your own.
Absolutely. I'm never alone.
There's a whole new wave.
Totally.
Is there been some kind of reaction to the Trump administration and like this whole new wave of like, a new generation of Democrats coming into?
I think it's funny. Obviously, I'm not a fan of President Trump whatsoever, and I could talk about that for hours. But I actually don't even mention Trump too much in my day-to-day work because I feel like he takes all the air out of the room.
Gotcha.
But the one thing we can give credit to him is kind of waking up a lot of people to the realization that politicians are not untouchable. Politicians have been incredibly flawed for a long time, and we should do something about it. And there are so many broken systems around us, but in reality, they were designed to be this way. So, I mean, they're working just fine. And it's up to us to try to fix it and to correct it. And that requires new faces into the political realm. And so even for me, I was a longtime advocate in this town. I mean, I worked at Planned Parenthood for 6 years. Even before Planned Parenthood, I was a college advocate and organized on my campus over at UCF. And you got really involved in local issues, international issues. But didn't even think I would be someone to run for office because I never saw folks that looked like to me. And then after Trump won, I was like, oh, wow. Like, if I don't, we need to change things up because the reality is that people are tired of Democrats and Republicans, right? And if you ask someone what's the difference, they wouldn't even be able to tell you because they both take money from the same people, same corporations. They both have lied to you. And so that was, but, President Trump was a catalyst for me to say, we got to do something about this. And so to some degree, I think a lot of us, we almost wouldn't be here if it wasn't for what happened in 2016.
Yeah.
But to that point, there's still like a whole lot of work to do.
Sure.
And I am concerned about November, not so much for our campaign because we're working really hard and we're carrying people alongside us and doing everything that we need to do to ensure that folks know we care about them. But the presidential is getting really worried for sure.
Yeah. We group and I, we actually went into your literature handout today, the
Yes,
drop.
I know. I saw
That was
Alyssa.
cool.
Yeah, thanks for coming out, y'all.
Yeah,
That
it was
amazing.
totally a pleasure. It was just a wait. I mean, like I said, we were really happy you gave us some of your time. We were happy to to give it right back.
How'd you like it?
One of the things that stood out to me, and just kind of what you brought up now, is there's this. You're kind of worried about like this November election, right? And
Right.
it is kind of like it's so like evenly divided. It's almost hard to tell, I think.
Right.
And when
Right.
we were going through the neighborhood today, dropping literature, we would see a Joe Biden sign right next to a Trump sign, right next to a Joe Biden sign, and it was just we were like, what is this neighborhood barbecue like? Like what?
Totally. And that's our district, right? Like, I think a lot of folks assume that like someone like me gets elected and must be a Democratic seat, but we flipped this seat. Like we worked really hard. I have no doubt there are Trump voters who voted for us, and they very well might vote for us again, especially in our work with local issues like unemployment. But it does open up your eyes to just how complex people are,
Right.
and how if you're not there's if you're not meeting their needs and also just meeting folks where they're at, you're going to lose them. And so I'm never afraid to have a conversation with any type of person. And especially through this pandemic, we've helped folks of every color and stripe. We don't ask for party affiliation. And but you really get to understand like what drives someone to align with President Trump. And often it's fear or a sense of being left out. And we have to try to find ways to address that so folks realize, it's okay. You don't have to be scared. Like we can build a community where joy is abundant and everyone is safe, and we can do that together. Not in this way,
Right.
but in another way.
Because in the end, everyone kind of has the same goal, right? Everyone wants to be like prosperous and peaceful. Like,
Right.
No one wants like anarchy, really. Or,
Right. And I think the difference is that like for a very long time, and it's part of our American culture, the sense of like unbridled capitalism, if you will, and which also ties into a notion of resources are scarce.
Okay.
If we operate in an environment where we think every resource is scarce, then we're going to fight each other for it. But if we can try to reinvent this culture to say, you know what, joy doesn't have to be scarce, power doesn't have to be scarce. Like we can each hold a piece of that and take care of one another in the process. If we can have American values reflect that mentality, which I know it can because many of us feel that way, then only good things will come. But it's like it's shifting those values, which is so hard to do because values are like deeply ingrained in us.
Sure.
And so it's not going to happen with one door knock or one conversation. It takes time. And that's the other issue too, y'all, with politics in general is that it's so transactional, right? Like you only hear about candidates when they're trying to get you to vote for them. And we've really challenged that because we show up all the time. Like we've been working even when we had no election.
Right.
And I think that's one reason why too, like, folks recognize that and they appreciate us for it.
Do you feel, because you have to get reelected every 2 years?
Yes.
Is that a negative to you trying to get things done? Do you feel like you have to constantly?
Oh yeah, it's exhausting.
Is it?
You're never, especially if you're me, because we don't take money from corporations. Like actually, I just mailed back a check.
Did you?
I did.
Wow.
I mean, it just hit the mail, the post office, so I haven't, heard back yet. But yeah, there was a company that, bless their hearts, they do solar energy work, but then an article came out in Tampa Bay Times about like some of the exploitive practices that contractors are using their program for. And once I read that, I was like, ew. And what's frustrating is that it was one of my like Democratic friends who like introduced me and then I even spoke to folks in the clean energy movement and they said it was also like a really great organization, whatever. Okay. But, when you're like me, when you really do live by your values, like you're going to make decisions that could potentially put you in disadvantage on the campaign trail because I'm actually taking a risk and I'm actually saying no to donations and, living by that example.
I mean, traditionally, that money is what kind of makes or breaks a lot of people getting elected, right?
100%, 100%. And even this past week, the Republican Party of Florida dumped $10,000 in my opponent's account. Meanwhile, we raised twice as much from 287 donations.
Get 'em.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. But
you.
to your point, it's a constant hustle. And especially during this pandemic, like I need to be focused on constituent services over the dynamics of fundraising. And so it's been a balancing act. Like I was up till, 12 a.m. last night just doing my financial reporting and looking at my fundraising goals for the next few days and just trying to also map out how we're going to get there. So that time I spend on just those administrative campaign tasks.
You could have spent them on people.
I could have been helping folks with unemployment. So you're like constantly doing everything at once, which is obviously overwhelming. But at the same time, like I respect our Constitution, I respect the process.
Sure.
I knew running for this seat, that's what it would be like. And I think what our strength is in numbers because we do have an incredible community that at this point, is centered in Central Florida, but it's spanned across the country even. We attract donors from random states in America because, oh my gosh, I got a letter in the mail from a mom in Oregon because she sent me a photo of, she was really cool, Rosie the Riveter. And then she put a comment about how Rosie the Riveter, for those who know, World War II poster of like
I'm not
women.
familiar, yeah.
Okay, so you've probably seen it, but it's the really famous poster of like, we can do it.
Oh, sure, okay. Yeah, of course.
So her name was Rosie. And so she wrote a note about how Rosie helped to kick the Nazi butts. And so like, we're going to do that this year too.
Wow.
I mean, it was really intense. At the same time, I was like, thank you.
Well, you're on the front lines of a movement in a way,
Right.
And it's an everyday battle. And
and there are Nazis among us.
And
so.
there's still Nazis for sure.
Little did I know that watching Indiana Jones would be so relevant, like growing up with Indiana Jones.
Like, this is actually...
I know, it's like real life now.
Skills, yeah. Oh my gosh. Who would have thought?
It's wild.
You're basically Indiana Jones.
Okay, I will say I had a huge crush on Indiana Jones. Han Solo was my first crush.
Okay.
And so all of Harrison Ford's like younger movies, those were my first loves.
Yeah, I mean, he was the guy that I wanted to be.
Totally.
So that makes sense. Yeah,
totally.
Right on.
Totally.
We could use a hero like that.
Absolutely.
I think we got one.
Absolutely.
Do you think that because of social media and the way that you can actually be present, you don't need as much money as you would have like 10 years ago?
It's a great question. Yes, I do. And I've done a lot of mentorship with first-time candidates, doing whatever I can, again, because power is not a scarce resource and power is neither good or bad. Depends who wields it.
Sure. And
we have been trying to lift all boats up and just like build power together. So I've been hosting fundraisers and, virtual mixers with different candidates and whatnot. And for so many of our first-time candidates they're always going to be outraised. Like no matter how much money you raise, like if you're a Democrat, you're not going to raise as much as your Republican colleagues. Like they have, bless their hearts, I have tons of Republican friends, but the politicians, they tend not to have the barriers that I described for myself, right? And the major corporations are going to make contributions because they want to maintain their power. So that's, how it'll like unfolds. And so my advice though is to spend it on digital because first of all, I think just having digital outlets are important because it, without a cost, it can give you the space to talk to folks. Now, of course, privacy is important. So I'm always sensitive to, being thoughtful to things like Facebook. Like we joined the Facebook boycott over the summer. We didn't do any advertising on Facebook alongside organizations under the Color of Change banner. But at the same time, when President Trump is running all of his ads, you have to try to compete in some way. So it is this catch-22.
Right.
But to that point, for so many candidates, they're never going to raise the kind of dollars their opponents do. I always encourage, be present on social media, provide an organic and authentic way to connect with you, and then also, if you have the funds to do any paid advertising, you absolutely should. And we're really intentional in always printing our social media, handles on anything we hand out too, because we know that we don't want this to be a one-time conversation with you. We want you to see our mail or see our yard sign or see a literature, on your door, and then follow us online so you can continue the conversation with us.
And what's cool about following you online is it's not like I said, again, it's like following another person that's just doing their
Right.
job, but they're actually doing something
Right.
for you.
Right. And I'm such a nerd. So I love sharing like articles through our social media accounts too. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding. I'll just be like reading something. I'm like, this is really cool. And I'll share it.
Yeah.
Like there is
Like,
there's no strategy.
Right. It's just like, this is who I am.
I know.
Like,
I'm
accept
like,
me or you don't.
I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
I'm reading about like women in NASA. This is cool. You know,
Yeah.
I post it because, you know, again, I think that a part of it is just people get exhausted by like bad news all the time.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to get in that pattern because things like are very challenging right now. But, you know, I always try to just be authentic in these digital spaces as if we were in a room together, as if we were able to just, you know, laugh about something or even share pain over something, but at least not doing it alone.
Yeah. Speaking of, if you like space.
I do love
are you?
space. Yeah, huge Star Wars fan and grew up with Cosmos when I was a kid. My
Oh,
dad's
sure.
an engineer. So
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
cool.
Well, he went to UCF and
So he's super disappointed in you.
yes, actually, Iranians, let's be clear. My dad told me upon going to college that I should study biology, physics, or chemistry. And
What did you go to college for?
I went to UCF and I went the complete opposite direction. I started as an environmental science major, so I was taking all the hard sciences, but then really wanted to get more involved in politics. And so I ended up having a double major in political science and women's studies.
Oh, he was like blasphemy, right?
I know.
That's funny. I don't
they
know,
totally,
but
I mean,
can
whenever when I
imagine.
told my dad that I had switched to these fields of study, you know, his first reaction was, well, you know, Hillary Clinton, she does that type of work and she has a job. And I was like, yeah, she has a job, you know, like not exactly my role model, but that's fine, Dad. Thanks,
Yeah.
Pops.
I'm gonna be fine. Don't
I
worry.
know, but
Yeah.
you know, for so many immigrant parents, it's like they want you. I mean, they want you to be happy and safe, right? And they want you to pay your bills and have a family. And so that's
Totally.
always been my dad's like biggest concerns for his children. So I don't know how much my dad actually knows what I do day to day, but as long as like I had a roof over my head and
Yeah.
food on the table, then he's chill.
That like really like well my grandparents immigrated. And so I kind of have like
wow.
I kind of see what happened with my mother growing up, and it was very much
Totally.
like, I mean, my grandparents were very hard workers. They came in there, you know, he was like digging ditches. My grandmother was like,
What are their
you know,
roots? We're
Italian.
Italian. Oh, that's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I'm really proud of it, you know. And
You should be.
It is. It's a crazy story. You know, I won't go too much into it, but it is kind of like I was this close to not being an American in a
Right.
way. I kind of think of sometimes.
Right,
And,
totally.
I think the way my mother raised me was very much reactive to the way she was raised, and she was kind of
Right.
like, do you a little bit more than they were to her.
Totally.
They were like, you need to get married and have family and get kids, you know. And she's just kind of like, what do you like?
Good on her, though.
Yeah.
That's
Thanks, Mom.
really cool. Mama
Thanks.
Bear.
Yeah.
No, that's really, really cool.
Yeah,
That's, and, you know, that's also, I mean, it's so cool to hear immigrant stories of just how every generation, you know, is still teaching parts of their identity but also like adding their own lens, you know, and you're going to keep doing the same thing. And it's so cool.
It's wild to think how much has changed between just those last generations or two.
That
It's
too.
a totally different world.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
So what are I handed out some things today about you. You care a lot about the nature. Or
I
what
do.
was
yeah,
the
Split
preserve?
Oak.
Split Oak.
Oak Forest.
That hit a nerve for me because I grew up in like right off the beach in South Florida.
Oh my gosh.
And, you know,
Yep.
algae blooms, things like that. You know, the
Yep.
environment the ecosystem down there is very precious to the locals.
100%.
And that was something when I saw
100%.
that, I was like, oh, I'm very proud to be handing this out today.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for doing it too.
Sure, yeah.
And for folks who don't know, I mean, Orange County historically has been a company town. And by that, I mean developers make all the decisions. And so when we talk about sprawl and we talk about overdevelopment and traffic, I mean, all these communities and these, you know, I mean, my dad lives in Avalon Park. So, I mean, that's one example of it, right? Like just the sprawl of how Orange County versus smart planning, where we're looking at public transportation and ways to kind of connect our neighborhoods. It's been the opposite, right? And through that process, there's been a lot of efforts to rezone the acreage within different properties to say, you know, in some of our rural development areas, the county has proposed in the past changing it so you can build more houses on a smaller plot of land. And the case of Split Oak, it's really, really bad. Basically, Split Oak Forest is a preservation that Orange County government in the 1990s set aside and said, because they did a major development project.
It was a preserve.
Correct.
Okay.
And it was supposed to be like a compromise back then because they said, we're going to build in this part of Orange County, and as an exchange to the community, we're going to leave this sensitive land untouched, and that's Split Oak Forest. And for those who don't know where it is, think about Moss Park, Narcoossee, like that Southeast Orange County, that's where it is. And so long story short, we have all this new development happening in Southeast Orange County, kind of tied to Lake Nona and some of those major developers. And so they want to build a toll road that goes through Split Oak Forest versus an alternative path, which would require homes to be relocated. And so they rather just go through this land preservation versus trying to basically it would be eminent domain and trying to purchase these people's houses to build through them, which neither one is a good thing. I mean, I think the fact that we're seeing all this development should be a question mark anyways, right? Like, we literally don't have room. You're either going to take away homes or you're going to build through a forest.
Like those are your options?
Question marks
Maybe,
there. But yeah, and so long story short, the county moved forward with it. It was a very contentious issue. The commissioners approved it. And then the Charter Review Board, which is a collection of everyday people appointed by county commissioners, they put this on the ballot. So it's really a lot of interesting tension, too, because the county commissioners voted for the construction, and then the group of people that they appointed said no.
Wow.
And so now you have on the county ballot here in Orange County, we have 3 different amendments, actually.
Okay.
There's this one that's yes on 2. The first one is actually another controversial and good one for the environment. It would basically put almost as if the Wekiva River has rights. Like, it's supposed to be the right to not be polluted. It's a movement across the world that's, again, it's very controversial, but it's called like a nature bill of rights in a way. And so it's trying, the whole concept, I guess, is since corporations are people, like, why can't the environment also have a say in protecting themselves?
That's interesting.
So you can sue on behalf of Wekiva River if it's being polluted, or if you think it's going to be polluted from a new development. It's very nuanced and potentially, will be challenged in court if it does pass.
Right.
But that's Amendment 1. And then the third amendment on our charter ballot amendments would make it easier for citizens to put things on the ballot through signature collection. So I think all 3 on the county level.
Say that one more time. The signature?
Something that our Republican mayor did for the county a few years ago, Teresa Jacobs. She's now school board chairwoman. But they made it very difficult to change Orange County's charter, because you can also change the charter. And the charter's like, think about the U.S. Constitution. A charter is like your county's constitution.
Gotcha.
It's like the document that defines your county and its rules and whatnot.
Okay.
And so, long story short, there was a lot of efforts in the past by progressive organizations to change things to the charter through collecting petitions. And this really pissed off companies like Walt Disney World. And so they put a lot of efforts behind making that collection process more difficult, which the state of Florida has done with the state constitution multiple times as well, basically trying to take away the direct democracy piece to changing your charter or changing your state constitution. So Amendment 3 rolls back some of those barriers to make it not even easier, but just a decent amount of work that isn't overburdened. You know what I mean? Because it already is hard to change the charter, but they basically just made it harder.
Okay. It seems like, a lot of these problems stem from large companies having too much pull in politics.
Tell me more.
Which isn't like, well, I just discovered something new, right? All of our problems are solved.
But it's very brave in saying it, right?
Well, I mean, I don't want, like, companies and businesses to not have a say.
Right.
Of course. But it seems, especially with the money, is there like the lobbying and things like that? I often hear from people on both sides saying, like, money, that kind of money in politics is just, that's where the corruption is. Like, a lot of people who are, they think they're anti-capitalist, maybe they're just like corruption capitalists,
right. Like crony capitalism in a way. Yeah. No, I would agree with that. It's money is definitely the problem, without a doubt. The fact that it costs so much money to even run a campaign, a successful campaign is already a bad thing because it automatically nixes people who could be really effective. I mean, for someone like me, it's very unlikely for someone like me to be successful in this space because in most cases, raising money for a media market like this one it's very difficult. Now, I have a background in nonprofit management. I've been an advocate for over a decade. So I have this organic network when we first ran for office of volunteers from Planned Parenthood, of some of our board members at Planned Parenthood, like Equality Florida, like because I was so involved.
You get the friends.
Yeah, and
right.
It really was all friends who've like were my first donors. They helped us raise $12,000 our first day back in 2017. We ran for office.
Wow.
So super blessed in that way. Cool. And then, a lot of hard work like maintains the momentum. But, for a lot of young first-time candidates, if you don't have that network, it's very difficult. And you shouldn't have to raise this kind of money to be effective. So I think step one is just campaign finance reform in general. But the role that corporations play, first of all, they are very active in the legislative process. And because there are term limits in Florida that are 8 years long, you could make the argument that once a lawmaker really understands the process, they're removed. In 8 years, they can't run for anything else. They could run for state senate, for example, or vice versa. But most cases, after 8 years, unless there's another legislative seat in your area, you leave the legislature.
Okay.
Now, what that means is that the lobbyists who've been there for 10, 15 years know a lot more than you do.
Right.
And so many lawmakers, especially freshman lawmakers, they fall for those traps. And the lawmakers become their friends, with the lobbyists, and they do what they're told. And then, of course, there's a financial incentive attached to it as well. And there's many, many cases where, a major development project receives like some money in the budget, and then the chairman of that committee gets a big check after the session's over. Like those are
That's crazy.
So common. And I think what's even more insidious and perhaps not as well detected because it's more complicated is tax policy.
Oh, right.
And I've been diving deep into the world of tax policy. I serve in Ways and Means. And it is shocking to me just the amount of money we give away to corporations through tax breaks. And we don't even see the cash because they don't have to give it to us. We let them find loopholes. We give them exemptions. They can reduce their liability for taxing. And, at the end of the day, it's people who lose out because we're all paying our taxes.
Yeah.
But the big corporations are not.
It seems like almost like a lose-lose because it's like historically, if you raise taxes, they avoid them somehow anyways.
Such a good point.
Right? It's like, what do you do? What do you do?
Right. It's such a good point. It is. I mean, there are tactics that to your point, everything needs to be like evidence-based. And there are tactics in other states that we can learn from. But you're right. I mean, the biggest corporations, they will hire the lobbyists and the attorneys and the accountants. To find ways. But we don't have to make it extra easy for them, right?
Yeah.
And to your point, there are so many cases of lawsuits that happen where a state's Department of Revenue, the audit team, will then go after a corporation for finding that loophole and calling them out for it, and then there's settlements and they get the money back. So our executive branch could also be more aggressive and just finding those type of players and holding them accountable.
Right. I like Andrew Yang a lot.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like at least I like listening to his ideas.
Totally.
And on one of the things he brought up on campaign reform, I think is that what you called it?
Yeah, campaign finance reform.
Yeah, is he had like this loose concept that I had never heard of before where everyone kind of gets $100 to put towards a candidate each year.
Yes.
You can't spend it anywhere else, but you can donate it. And that's the only money that a candidate can accept.
I love it. So public finance of campaigns from that lens is actually not a radical idea at all. And it would give, it's almost like if you had like 100 poker chips and you decide, where you want to put them.
Yeah.
And it would give every person of any economic class an equal say, in someone's ability to advertise themselves to an audience. I mean, it really is a cool concept. And to Andrew Yang's credit, he has helped lift up, first of all, just as an Asian American voice, like in politics, which is so needed. But he's also really lifted up some concepts that folks, at first thought were crazy, like universal basic income.
Yeah, he sold me on it.
And then during this pandemic, it's like not controversial, like at all. We're taking people out of poverty if we can give them a basic amount to survive on. I mean, we just got a lot of work to do. And I'm grateful for those voices.
He said one thing with UBI that like really stole me when he was like, this is comparing it to how welfare, people can get stuck on welfare because they're scared of losing it.
Right.
But you can't lose UBI.
Right.
And
right. Such a good point.
Gives you the power, right?
Even with the unemployment system right now, I was just thinking about this when I was coming to see you. Like, there are many people right now who have holds in their accounts because they worked for a week. Like, they went back to work, but they only had 2 weeks of a job, or maybe they worked part-time somewhere, or they did a
like
gig
they claimed
somewhere.
like $100 or something.
Right. They claimed like $100, $200, whatever that week was, and now DO thinks they went back to work, and they have a hold on their account. And so it's like you're literally punishing people for going back to work and making some money, and then having to tap back into unemployment. And it's like pulling my hair out, because to your point, and actually we call that in the description you just gave around, losing your benefits because you get a job. That's called the fiscal cliff. That's like the technical term for it. And basically what it means is that you have families who will decide, do I want to take this job, or do I want to keep my income low to still get these benefits because the job I'm getting is not going to pay me enough. And if you're a single mom, for example, it's like, you could lose your coverage for daycare if you take this job. And if you take that job, it's great for your professional growth and everything. But at the same time, now you got to pay for childcare. So your take at home cash by the end of that month is probably less than if you had the benefits still. And so we really need to be more sensitive to the fiscal cliff and not punish people for getting a job and punish people for wanting to be successful in life.
Is it happening because there's too much for like the unemployment to handle, like where they just see like it's almost like it's a system thing, right? Where it's the inefficiency of government, as they call it sometimes.
Yes, definitely. I mean, a lot of I can speak to Florida the best because that's where we all live, grow, and fight. But but in particular in Florida, we have a lot of what's called administrative burden, which is basically intentional steps by government to make these options harder for you to achieve and to access. So for example, with the unemployment system, in most cases, you have this bureaucratic work search requirement. You have this waiting week. These issues, these hoops have been waived for the pandemic. But in most cases, when you apply for unemployment, you have to apply for 5 jobs every week. You get randomly selected for interviews at, with the department. And so these are all created as a means, not because they actually care about you or want to try to, get you back to work in a way that
they want to get you off.
They want to get you off, and they want to kick you off. That's it. They want every excuse just to remove you, even if you haven't found a job yet. They just want to remove you.
Yeah.
And we've seen the same type of tactics for things like Medicaid, voting rights. A lot of states where they pass these voter ID requirements, those are not necessary. They're just designed to make it harder for you to be eligible to vote.
And what's is it to like one party's benefit for people not to vote? Like,
It's a really great question.
This is where this is one of the things I'm very confused about.
No, and it kills me because I think if everyone votes, it's the best thing for democracy, right?
Yeah.
And if you have something really good to offer the American people, then why are you trying to stop them from voting?
Yeah.
Like, that's the bottom line. And we think about rights restoration for our returning citizens. Like, the assumption that the majority party is making right now in Florida, which is the Republican Party, is that these folks are probably not going to vote for Republicans. How do you even know that? Did you poll them? Did you survey them? Did you meet every single person?
They just circle that map and they're like, we don't want them to vote.
Right. I mean, I have visited prisons in Florida. I have done surprise visits in prisons. As a state lawmaker, I can do that. And
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. And I visited about 3 prisons so far, and
Really?
And I will visit more once the pandemic subsides, because most prisons have lockdowns and things like that now.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of relationship with incarcerated loved ones and with inmates who write to our office, and you get to meet folks directly impacted by the criminal legal system. And they're every color and stripe. They're every political party. I mean, I helped a family in Polk County, and I didn't care what their political affiliation was, and they might vote for Trump. I don't care. And so the assumption that every formerly incarcerated person is only voting Democrat is also just ludicrous. Like, how can you even assume that? And And because of your assumption, you're intentionally delaying their ability to vote. It would have been like the best public relations move for our governor to just embrace these voters versus fight them back.
Yeah.
There's been some incredible moments in states like Kentucky where they've passed some criminal legal system reforms that have been retroactive, so nonviolent offenders on things like cannabis possession in the 80s or drug addiction, things like that, they were released. And it was just like a tearjerker, like watching families be reunited after decades, being in prison for something that's
illegal now or something, basically.
Right, 100%. Or for something where you were, addicted to some sort of drug and needed an intervention versus incarceration, but because of hard-on crime policies and mandatory minimums, you were locked up instead. And so those could have been moments for our governor to be compassionate, right? And he could have probably won voters that way. And instead he's doing the complete opposite. And so it just drives me crazy because I appreciate that question because I don't think that there's, I don't think that if more people vote in this, it means that one party wins all the time. Because like we said earlier,
not good for anybody.
Yeah. And like we said earlier, there's plenty of Democrats that are bad on these issues too, or who don't care enough or toe the corporate line, like plenty of Democrats who do that. And even with Orange County, we talked about Save Split Oak. It's a Democratic county commission that is building a toll road through a forest.
Oh my God.
Come on.
And the last thing Orlando wants is another, I swear to God, I'm going to say this, another fucking toll road. You know what I mean? I'm over it.
Every time we even think about when I say toll road, like you could just feel the cringiness.
The cringe, right?
Yeah,
it
is.
It's so
how many more? I mean, I thought I have to look back at this history honestly, but I thought when the 408 was built, it wasn't supposed to be a toll road forever. I thought that was part of its origin story.
I thought it was something. I swear it was still enough to pay it off or something.
Right, and then it was supposed to just be a county road. Yeah, and so anyways, we don't need more toll roads. We need more safe options of public transportation. We need to see connectivity and more density in our neighborhoods. And that is the new generation, I think, of Floridians too. It's healthier, happier communities that are more connected.
Yeah. Oh, while we're still on the topic of voting, you should tell people to register to vote.
Yes. Do you want to tell them too?
Yeah, let's tell them. I feel like yeah.
Yes, please.
Please. What do you do if you need to vote? If you need to register, what do you do?
Hello, listener.
You can.
Hello, listener.
Are you listening?
If you are not registered to vote yet, or perhaps you've moved and have a new address, please register and update your registration. You can actually do it online. It's super easy. Just Google Florida registration online and the website will be there and you can easily fill it out. But just remember, the deadline is October 5th.
October 5th. Be registered by October 5th.
Be registered by October 5th. And actually, if you are 16 years old, you can pre-register and be ready when you're 18. And,
that's a great idea. Why wouldn't you do that?
Right. And we have some folks that will turn 18 before November, but they're not 18 yet.
Oh, so if they turn 18 at the end of October or something.
They will be ready to vote.
So they can pre-register.
Yeah, if they pre-register. Yeah.
Do it.
So please do it.
Aren't you tired of your parents telling you what to do all the time? Register to vote.
I love it. And, there's so many ways to vote this cycle. And I'm still encouraging early vote along because I vote by mail. But I do think with vote by mail, just be very intentional in tracking your ballot. Request it early, mail it back early, or drop it off.
Drop it off. It's a good one.
Yeah, but just don't let the president scare you because I do think it's still a viable way to vote. And if anything goes wrong, keep election day as your plan C. Have it there.
Right.
But ideally, if you vote early or vote by mail, you can then volunteer on election day and help get more folks to the polls.
There you go. And why wouldn't you do that? Because you're probably tired of isolating anyways. Get out of your house
Get out of your house.
Right?
Put your mask on. Get some signs.
And then you can. And then if someone gets elected and you don't like them, you can actually complain.
Yes, you have every right to complain.
Yeah. which is like sometimes that's what you really need. You know, you need like
You need the permission to complain. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. Then you could be that person that says, I gave it my all, you know, and like really have the credibility to complain.
totally. That's amazing. I love that little speech you gave because you know what? There's no teleprompter. She doesn't have a team writing that. That's just Anna Eskamani.
You get what you get everything that's here.
That's
this
it,
is
right?
it.
It's good because you're a real person. You're fun, and you deal with serious issues at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
You can do it all.
Totally. That's a good
amazing.
reminder because we find my sister. I have a twin sister. Her name is Ida, and she's amazing.
Cool.
So she always says that laughing is her coping mechanism.
Oh, yeah.
I guess sometimes I feel bad because I say LOL a lot on the internet. And I don't always say it because I'm like joking. Sometimes I do like lowercase LOL, and that's a very more kind of like LOL.
Oh yeah.
You know,
I guess I kind of yeah.
where I'm not really laughing at all. Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
But some people would take offense, like, why are you laughing at me? And I'm like, no, I mean, like, I just laugh. This is my coping mechanism. Like, this is what I do. But it doesn't mean I'm happy about it or I think it's funny. You know, it's just sometimes it's out of pain.
Right. It's funny how we use those acronyms and things like that to communicate. It's
right.
totally like we're rewriting language.
Oh my gosh, I know. I say LOL like in public all the time. And every time I do it, I'm like, all right, well.
This is actually something we recently were talking about,
Yeah.
how like LOL has been reformatted to just be like, I'm not dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not.
Right.
I'm
Yeah,
not, I
otherwise
don't
you could
have
sound
any,
angry or something if you don't laugh at your
Right.
text, you know, those kinds of things.
Right.
You
Or
know?
maybe like a smiley face emoji or
Yeah.
something. I tell all of our young people though, I'm like, you gotta make sure you know how to do emails without emojis and
yes.
to express kindness like without a smiley face. That's like one of the things we teach our interns is
Totally.
because and that's something else too that like makes me so excited for the next generation of young people is that like the skills to communicate in person alongside through a medium like email or like Instagram or oh my gosh, TikTok, communicating in all
Right.
these spaces, like
Gifts.
those are gifts. Yeah, that is a gift, right? Like to have
Yeah.
to be able to do all of that is a true gift, and it's very important in any career choice you go, whether it's private sector, academics, politics, sports. Like you being able to communicate through different mediums these days and doing it from like very simple tools, super
Yeah.
super transformational.
And now a few words about our sponsor. Castledor Studios is a music production house located in Orlando, Florida, and it's where I choose to record episodes of The Orange Lando Show. The studio features a blend of vintage and modern equipment and can accommodate musical artists of any genre, voiceover recordings, and, of course, podcasts. They can help with anything audio related. Castledor Studios offers free tours. Come check out their amazing facility for free. There's nothing to lose. They also offer free open house events like their monthly songwriter night where artists share and critique each other's work. It's free, people. Every session you book with Castledor Studios will be professional, private, and inspiring. If you have a creative idea, take action now and contact Castledor Studios at castledorstudios.com. Use reference code OrangeLando to receive a 10% discount on your first booking. All right, back to the show. I want to ask you about, and this is kind of shifting the tone a little bit maybe, even though
Ready.
we're having fun.
Here for it.
But it's just something I imagine that probably affected you in some way. But earlier this week, Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh my gosh. May she rest in power.
Yeah.
RBG, absolutely. Yeah.
She was one of the good ones, right?
She was totally, and just like even before she served in the highest court, like such a trailblazer. And I mean, women like me would not be able to do what we do if it wasn't for her. Like we owe her a debt of gratitude. And she was not perfect by any means, but like what a incredible woman among us. And she was holding on for as long as she could.
Yeah.
And to think that she must have had so much weight on her shoulders, she did not deserve to have that much pressure. part of me, of course, is very sad that she is no longer on this planet with us. But at the same time, it's like she deserved to rest.
Right, she did her
She
work.
gave this world so much. Yeah.
I really didn't know too much about her until this week, and I was just kind of like, oh, that was, I knew who she was and some of the things, but
Yeah, there's some great documentaries out there about her,
Cool.
and I'm just like, ugh, like crying while watching them. And of course, it sets a tone for the next like 40 some days of just, we have to go beyond the courts. I've been telling that to everyone. Like the fact that we were putting so much weight on the Supreme Court of the United States, and even in Florida, because we have a state court, Supreme Court here too, putting so much weight to say, well, let the legislature pass that bill. We're going to sue, and it's going to be fine. Like that type of assumption.
Right. We'll just be like, oh, we'll just take it to the courts. That's always the thing. Like, well, we'll settle it in court.
Yeah, we can't do that anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like we can't rely on the courts to protect our rights. And so I think it does once more reinforce the importance of local campaigns and local elected officials, because if we can stop those type of bills from passing at a state level, they're never going to get to the Supreme Court of the United States. And so it reinforces the importance of that local neighborhood activism level of pushing back against policy that takes place, in our case in Tallahassee, but in state capitals across the country. Now, unfortunately, there already are really bad laws moving forward, right? So at the end of the day, this will be the SCOTUS that potentially is going to be hearing some of the most extreme abortion bans in the country, coming before them.
It blows my mind.
It does. And, the only dynamic that gives me a little bit of hope in this situation is that some of these bans were just so blatantly unconstitutional that you just can't even,
Right.
I don't know how a conservative court would even uphold them. Like, it just doesn't make sense. But at the same time, like, nothing makes sense these days. And so you just have to be really, really, really on guard.
Constitution gets thrown out the window sometimes.
Well, and you serve your country, right? You're a veteran.
Yep.
I mean, my heart breaks for our veterans because I feel like veterans have put so much on the line, and to come back home and have a president that's like so careless with these issues, so careless to start a new war, so careless in our Constitution and what it stands for. And my heart just aches. Like, it truly aches, especially for folks who've made the ultimate sacrifice. It's just so not okay. And I'm really grateful that national security voices have been coming out to speak against the president, because like, it's not, we can't go down this path of just, painting other countries as evil every single day when the lives of our troops are like potentially going to be impacted, right? Like, I have family in Iran, and this escalation with Iran in particular has been really, really scary, not just for my family there, but thinking about my friends who serve in the military and just sending them over to what would be a very bloody war, without a doubt. And it's just so unnecessary. And I don't even know what the motivation is beyond like flexing your muscles, Trump,
Yeah, and I'm not even that well informed on a lot of, I can't even keep up with it, right?
It's too much,
and,
right?
But, I mean, from my own personal experience, first of all, I always thought the position of commander-in-chief to me was always scary as hell. I'm like, the civilian, I mean, it makes sense, when you look at it, right? But you want somebody who you really know is going to have like a team of experts around them, and they're going to listen. And I don't know. I can never tell who, especially with Trump, like if he's
who's
listening to and what's
him. Right.
So that's something to me where it's like, that's a red flag where I'm like, I'm going to obey these orders no matter what. Right. And I mean, it kind of gets the same issue with some of the police today too. I think there's like there's a system, and they follow these rules and they do things, and it's a systematic issue maybe.
I agree.
I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing too about so many officers, police officers in particular, is that they might come from a military background. They might come from a background of living in low income household. They might come from a history of family members who were cops. And there's potentially a lot of trauma there that's never really explored or dealt with, right? And so,
it's interesting.
I mean, I think about our prison systems as an example. You can be 18 years old and serve as a correctional officer. And so we're putting these fresh-faced 18-year-olds into our prisons to ensure the safety these environments that have thousands of incarcerated people, many who are actually all will be older, not the same age, older, and likely know more about the prison than you do. And that's not okay, right? And so like we've almost set up these systems to not work and to endanger people, whether, you know, whoever's in those situations. And that's which means we have to invest a lot more in just, you know, who fulfills these roles, and also, of course, what's the accountability mechanisms when people's lives are lost. And I think that's the frustrating part, is that there really aren't many accountability measures. You know, and I'm a big supporter of unions, always have been, but the police unions have always been questionable to me, and they did not endorse me, and I did not want their endorsement, you know, because I remember I did my interviews with them when I was first running for office, and you know, and they asked about my perspective on, you know, issues of like police involved incidents, and I was very clear and vocal about my concerns. And at that point I was like, I didn't, you know, like I didn't come here to get your support. I came here to have like a one-on-one conversation to let y'all know, like, these are problems we're talking about. And then to hear the governor this week just like completely ignore, you know, our calls for accountability and Black Lives Matter, and to just completely, you know, focus on this hard on crime, criminal penalties, when we already have criminal penalties for things he's talking about. Just like, it's just so frustrating.
I can that's to me, I don't even know how you do what you do, because that's just that drives me crazy. What really kind of gets me is, again, it's all about, it's going back to the courts now, right? It's always like we rely on the courts,
right?
And
at this point, you really can't anymore, right? You really can't. So again, I think it's why it's so important that more people get involved, that more people try to find power in pain. And I would say that Orlando is very good at that. I mean, this is the community that's home to Pulse nightclub, where we lost 49 angels at the hands of a gunman. And when that happened, this community showed up. Like, we came together and we said, we're not going to let hate win. We're also gonna not ignore the political implications of this, in the sense of doing something about, you know, gun access, mental health, you know, talking about these issues in a more intentional way, LGBTQ plus equality. You know, in this state, you can still be fired for being gay.
Can you?
Yes, you can.
That's written in like this,
in statute. We have no protections for LGBTQ plus discrimination statewide.
Wow.
Counties have protections, but it's basically a patchwork now of some counties that do, some counties that don't. And so, you know, if you identify as LGBTQ plus and you came to work on a Friday, got married over the weekend, came back on Monday, put a photo of you and your loved one on your desk, you could be fired for that, and it would be very difficult to seek legal protections in the state, depending on where you live.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we have so much work to do. But again, it's people that can lead it, and so
what I can understand about those is it's a very specific policy that needs to be changed. Right. It's like it's like very clear cut to me.
It's not a question.
Right.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a question. But you know where the issue always happens? This bill, it's called the Competitive Workforce Act, CWA. And it has been filed about 12 years now in the Florida legislature, trying to get it passed. In those 12, 13 years, it's only had one hearing, and it was a Senate committee. And it was temporarily postponed, which means it didn't have the votes to pass. So it was TP'd. Part of the debate was against trans people. That was the biggest part of the debate. And
people are debating against that, huh?
Yep. They're perpetuating the, you know, bathroom myths and fears. Like, well, someone's gonna, you know, pretend to be a gender to get into that bathroom.
They're imagining this crazy
oh my God,
scenario.
It's unbelievable. But that's what the opponents will use, and they'll line up to, like, you know, continue on this transphobic messaging.
Right.
And actually, this past legislative session, there was an effort that was attacking trans youth and making it more difficult for trans youth to access the beginning steps of transitioning their gender, which of course requires parental engagement consent already, but they were trying to ban any type of—
Does that include like surgeries and stuff like that?
So in most cases, when you are under 18, there is no surgery. In most cases, it's going to be hormones. So it's
Okay.
called HRT, hormone replacement therapy. And also it could be mental health resources, because it can be a lot to navigate that transition. But in most cases, it's going to be some sort of like medicine regimen for that young person to transition and be their authentic self. And so what the legislature was trying to do was ban any type of support for trans youth in transitioning in their gender. And it was they had like bogus doctors come and testify against it. And there were incredible trans youth that came to testify, against these doctors and against the bill. And fortunately, it did not move this past session. It was just that one hearing. But just another reminder of how disconnected the legislature is from these issues and how instead of talking about discrimination, they want to actually make it harder for trans youth to be themselves. Yeah. And, attacking trans youth like that, we know that suicide is very high among young people. And in some cases, it is associated with LGBTQ plus identity, not feeling accepted. So it's endangering in different ways if we don't allow a trans youth to feel accepted.
I mean, it's so beyond me to think that, I really can only to a certain degree, like, understand, like, what a trans person goes through, especially in the youth, like, and to get to a place where it's like you really feel outside of yourself and you see like an avenue that you can't approach because there's legal limitations.
Right.
And I know like a lot of the argument against it is that they say it's like a mental health issue or something like that, but I don't really know if that has any weight to it at all.
No, it doesn't. It truly doesn't. And of course, I think any young person who's going to say, like, I don't feel like this is my body, or I don't, I'm not happy in the skin that I'm wearing. It's very, very brave to say that and scary to say that. And the process to transition is not easy. So you're not gonna approach that lightly. Just like when it comes to ending a pregnancy, there's all these like a lot of the stigma around abortion is also grounded in this perception that, well, they're being irresponsible. You should have had that sexual activity, or you're not thinking through this decision. When in reality, for folks to make the decision to end a pregnancy, they have thought about it long and hard.
Yes.
And then to walk into a health center with protesters outside, then they're thinking about it again long and hard. And then to get into a health center where the state of Florida mandates an ultrasound, and the provider has to ask you, do you wish to see the ultrasound or no? Then you're thinking about it again.
Right. It's not like it's not like you like take a pill or whatever and it's done or something.
Right.
Like, there's a process.
Every part of the way. And even if it was as simple as taking a pill, right? Even in that process, you're still thinking about it, like, because it's a very serious decision to make.
Yeah.
But to your point, it's like it's no matter what dynamic you're in. Because my preference too is that like we reduce barriers, right? Like abortion should, we should reduce the rate of abortion by investing in comprehensive sex education and birth control. But at the same time, if somebody's in a situation where they know that they do not want to carry this pregnancy to term, we shouldn't be putting more roadblocks in that way. They've already thought about it. And I can't tell you how many times when I worked at Planned Parenthood, I would be with our volunteers as a health center escort. I would just make sure the volunteers were well fed, and I would be out there in case there was escalation.
So, like protesters and stuff or whatever, you'd help like get them in. And,
Right. Well, every Saturday back in the day when I was at Planned Parenthood, Saturdays were a day where we would provide abortion services. And so the admin office was closed, right? So, and I was in administration, so I wasn't a healthcare provider. But I would come on Saturdays to be with our volunteers, and when families came in, I would open up the office for the kids to watch cartoons. Because the thing is, what we don't talk about is that many women who end a pregnancy are already moms. And they can't find daycare. So they got kids with a friend or with the husband or the boyfriend, like in the car, in the hot sun. And so I would say, hey, like we got some coloring books. Like, we'd open up a little office. I put YouTube cartoons on. And so I'd be there every Saturday. And there were many times where folks would come outside for a cigarette and that kind of stuff. And so I would just, I would never, like, always just present. If they want to talk, like, we're there, but we're not, like, prying for information. But I have to tell you, so many moments where folks just wanted to get affirmation of the decision they were making. And they would just explain to me why they're making this decision. I would tell them, you don't have to explain anything to me. You're here, we trust you, like, you're going to be safe. But this fact that their gut reaction was to, like, explained to me tells me that they felt judged by society, right?
Yeah.
And they shouldn't have to feel that way.
Judged by society. And even if society wasn't judging them, they'd probably still be judging themselves in something. Like they're really thinking about it, right? Because
They're really thinking about it. You got it. Yeah. It's not something they just woke up. We're like, I'm going to end my pregnancy today.
Yeah, it's like, oh, look, it's the third. Yeah, it's Saturday. Another got time to,
Right. I mean, I can, the amount of pregnancy tests they must have taken before they got there, the amount of conversations they must have had, whether it was with their partner or their friends or their family or their God, like.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of decision making that goes into it, and for government to just automatically assume, and for others to stigmatize and say, much like a trans youth, that you're not thinking through this. It's like, how dare you say that?
Yeah.
If you've never been in my shoes before, then you don't know.
And America is all about freedom, right? Like you want to.
Thank you.
Isn't that the thing? Like make your own choices and like don't tread on me, right? That kind of a thing.
That's the irony about it, right?
It is
the irony about it. My mom was also an immigrant and she had an abortion. She was already the mom of 3 children, and she was 40 when she had my sister and I. So she was
40.
She was 40. Yeah, she's a boss babe,
Yeah.
and she was 40 and twins, right? An at-risk pregnancy.
Shit, right.
And so she became pregnant again with her husband and went and made the decision. And I remember she told me this, and she passed away when I was 13. So this memory is always stuck with me. She said, I always wanted to have another Anna, Ida, Aria, but we just couldn't afford it. And so that's why she ended the pregnancy. And the idea of my mom, an immigrant from a country like Iran, having to walk past protesters to access a service that should be legal and safe in this free country always pisses me off.
Yeah.
Because we fight for our freedoms in this country, and it's ridiculous that because certain people of a certain gender or income don't have it, doesn't make sense.
No,
that's not what
right.
defines this country. And so that's always part of my, my passion for these issues too, is I just think about people like us, and it's just not okay.
Totally. I'm happy that you're fighting for people.
Thank you.
When I was 16, I got a girl pregnant, and we had to do that, and it was not an easy decision.
No.
And it's still something I think about today, and it's not something I regret.
Totally.
But it was like you said, it's something that like it was. I was 16.
Totally.
And it was not in a position. It was very early on. And it was just.
Right.
I can only imagine what my life would have been like, or what I want the kids' life, and
her life too, right?
And we had in her life, yeah. And I won't say too much details, just to
out of privacy too.
And but the conversations that went on, with my parents, my family, and it was and then it's amazing what kind of people come out and tell you they've had similar stories.
1 in 4 American women have ended their pregnancy, have had an abortion in this country. And that actually is a decline. The rate has declined. It used to be 1 in 3, and that's because of birth control and sexual health education. But you are so right. We don't talk about it as much, and yet 1 in 4 women have ended a pregnancy.
Yeah.
And we should talk about it more. And I have to tell you, there have been moments.
It's like stigmatized, I guess.
It is very stigmatizing. And the frustrating part about it too is like in that situation that you went through with your partner and with your family, if you decided to become a young parent, if she chose adoption or end her pregnancy, every situation has shame and stigma, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's already challenging just doing either one of those options, and then let alone making a decision and then navigating that for the rest of your life, knowing that this country really does shame women, especially young women, in living their best life. And it reminds me, I remember I was walking in College Park, my first campaign. I was like coming back from a coffee shop or something, and run into a constituent, and she told me just like on the street her abortion story. And then I was at Drunken Monkey one day, and one of my one of my older friends, she's at this point, she's 60 years old, told me that she had 2 abortions in her life.
Wow.
And she whispered it in this coffee shop because she had never told anyone before, only her husband.
Yeah.
And
feels good to say out loud.
It feels good to say it out loud. And at the same time, like, I am so humbled and honored that like people trust me to have these conversations and want to talk to me about it. But we shouldn't have to whisper it in coffee shops, right? We shouldn't have to be so scared to talk about it, because it really is a real decision in a lot of people's lives. And I take so much pride in being an advocate for these issues, where we're not shaming or stigmatizing anyone, but we just want to have that moment to say, this is real.
Yeah.
And if you want to do something about it, the politicized attacks don't work.
Right.
And if anything, you're endangering people's lives long term, because if somebody wants to end their pregnancy and can't, they'll find a way to do it, and it's not going to be safe. And so it would be in everyone's best interest to commit to education, contraception, and it's okay to teach abstinence, but teach it as a form of birth control, alongside others. Don't just assume it's the only one you should teach. Yes. And that was the education I had. I went to Orange County Public Schools. I had abstinence-only education. It was a joke. Oh,
Did you get like the whole slideshow with the STDs and all that kind of thing?
Yes.
Like your sex organs are gonna fall out.
Yes, we got that one. We also got gum. This is a super common.
Gum?
Yeah. The instructor had a piece of gum, and she asked this young man in the front row if he wanted it, and he said yes. But before she gave it to him, she chewed it first.
Oh, I already know where you're going with this.
Yeah, took it and said, "Now do you want it?" It was so, I was not even sexually active at the time, and I sat there.
It's demeaning.
So demeaning and slut shaming.
And
completely. And I just felt so uncomfortable watching this happen. I was 16 watching it happen.
Shit.
And it was funny, when we left the auditorium, she had a basket of mints, and she asked each one of us to take a mint to make a commitment to her that we would not have sex before marriage. And I was like, are you kidding me?
She's demoralizing and she's corny.
Yeah, 100%. And so that was actually the beginning of my Planned Parenthood story, because I did not take a mint. And I was a late bloomer, so I wasn't in a relationship at that time. I didn't have my first kiss actually till I was, I think, senior. Yeah, a senior in high school. Yeah, I was.
Were you in like debate club and stuff or something?
So I was not in debate club. I was a theater nerd.
Ah, that's cool.
I know, but I was the techie.
Well, at the time, it wasn't cool.
I was a techie. So we were in our blacks backstage, and the actors looked good.
You're hiding in the shadows.
That's my life.
Yeah.
That was my life. I loved it.
Cool.
My twin sister and I were both props and costume mistresses. Stage left, stage right.
Yeah. That must have been confusing.
We loved it. We loved it. And so anyway, but I remember watching that sex ed, I'm using air quotes for those listening, experience, and went to go find Planned Parenthood, because I was like, this isn't going to help me prevent pregnancy. It's not going to help me be safe whenever I am ready to become sexually active. And so when I turned 18, I walked into a Planned Parenthood health center, and that's where my journey on reproductive health issues started. And I owe so much to Planned Parenthood, because first of all, the friends that I made along the way, all the student activists at places like UCF that are passing out the free condoms and trying to break the stigma are just heroes in their own way. Yeah. And then working at Planned Parenthood makes you really tough really fast in this state. And so many politicians are scared to talk about abortion, or will only talk about it when it's politically convenient to do so. And I take a lot of pride in being able to have these conversations, and de-escalate some of the tense moments that can come out of it. Sure. To find a common ground.
And just have a conversation rather than like an argument or
100%. I can't even battle. I know we've been like, we're probably like way over time, but
I feel like we're like definitely like in your zone, I think, a little bit. Like you're,
Well, the one last story I'll share, it was so funny. Anti-abortion extremists who had protested me at Planned Parenthood contacted my office for a meeting once I got elected. And I recognized their names,
Did they know your affiliation with?
Oh, 100%.
They knew who they were talking to?
100%.
Okay.
And so I got this email, and I was just like, what should I do? And I'm a very accessible person. So I emailed back, and I was like, hey there, I think you know where I stand on these issues, but if you'd like to meet, I'm very happy to do that. And so we had a 40-minute long meeting in my office, and it did not go well. I mean, it went in circles, and just they're very black and white about these issues, and I think they're more nuanced, because I do think it's personal for people, and we can't just make a decision across the board for everyone. And they recorded the entire conversation too. They had a camera there the whole time. It was super intense. But at the end, she hugged me and she said, I disagree with you, but I do think you're a good person. And And I have no doubt that they also they have the capacity to love too. You know, they're expressing it in a very different way.
That's a great thing you said, because not even just with this topic, but all the issues. It's like if it's a lot of people have this disposition, like if you don't agree with me, you're either you're POS or you're racist or whatever. You know, you're evil, you're wrong, you're bad.
Right. And it's pretty incredible what like a little bit of love can do for people. It can help them just at least not be as defensive, so we can get to the root cause of your disagreement or of your concern, because that's the thing too, is I think in most cases folks have a front-facing aggressive nature about something, and then if you can just approach the subject with open-ended questions, with curiosity, right? Then a lot of cases that person will calm down a little bit. It's hard to do over the internet, candidly.
There's a lot of just shouting of like, this is what I think, and you're wrong. But like you said, I think that's a good takeaway from maybe this whole conversation. We can kind of start wrapping it up, but it's very much about the American experiment is an experiment, right?
Yes.
It's happening, and to just think you know the answers and this is the right way all the time is to just to close yourself off to critical thinking and to new solutions.
Totally. I agree with that. To be humble about what you know and to be humble about what you can know. Because no one can predict the future. And so for someone to also make complete, declarative statements about what tomorrow looks like, or, you got to be humble about your knowledge and your capacity to even have an accurate perspective of the future, because none of us really know. We just have to do our best every day.
And if someone did know this pandemic was going to happen,
come on, why didn't you tell us? Come on.
Yeah, right? Come on. Exactly. It's my feeling. Okay, so October 5th
is the voter registration deadline.
And
absolutely.
And then
November 3rd is election day.
Election day. So vote.
Vote. Get it done.
Just vote. All right. Anna Eskamani, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It was an honor.
Right on.